Thanks for coming out on this cool Wisconsin day to talk about our water futures here. Didn't we just do this? I went back through some old notes to prepare for this, and it seems like to me in 2010 in a different building in the town of Rome we had another big powwow about groundwater and agricultural expansion. Is that just my faulty memory, or do we really do that? Okay, there's some heads shaking, yes. It was an Adam? Yeah, okay. I get around, so this is going to be a general kind of talk. You know, this is the elephant in the room is what the Waisaki KFO will do to groundwater and surface water resources here. And you know, the environmental impact statement is supposed to be rolling to completion here in a couple of months. We'll have a pretty good idea. So you know, a lot of what I'm going to do here today is to provide background for when this thing comes out, you can make an evaluation. You know, I have a pretty good idea what the consequences are going to be within the town of Saratoga. Town of Rome, you know, it's not so clear to me right now, so we'll have to see what that comes up. But, you know, point being here, well, I'll tell you what the point is for a second here. Our natural resources, when we don't manage them, bad things tend to happen. So, back them up. Okay, I'll back them up. There we go. So, you know, this is the cutover in northern Wisconsin. We didn't manage our forest resources at one time, and this is how the whole northern part of the state looked. You know, we had lots of wasted timber, we had a lot of soil erosion, we had years and years of wasted productivity, that if we were smarter about how we manage our forests at the time, we'd be a lot better off. Well, you know, we kind of figured this out, and today, you know, we do forest management differently. We do it on considering that we have to regrow trees on a cycle and all these kinds of things. Well, and then, you know, another resource challenge is soil erosion. And here's a farm in southwest Wisconsin around the turn of the last century, and you know, we didn't manage how we did cultivation, you know, up and down hills and all that kind of thing. Lost tremendous amounts of soil, all kind of native soil productivity. You know, went downstream, and oh, by the way, you know, it just choked the streams and made them less productive too. And you know, today, well, we still have a challenge here, but we don't have these most egregious kind of cases. And by and large, we do a better job of soil management. And it wasn't that long ago, and I'm not the oldest one in the room, and, you know, we can remember these kind of scenes in Wisconsin, and the Wisconsin River and the Fox River and all kinds of other water bodies where, you know, just because of all the filth we were putting in rivers and lakes and things like that, we were killing them. So, you know, here's a fish kill on the Wisconsin River. Here is around Rhinelander, I think above, well, I forgot what falls it is. But anyway, it says photo courtesy of Bob Martini down here, who spent his career working on the Wisconsin. And by golly, you know, now Bob Martini goes down there and he gets an occasional muskie. So we do a lot better now with how we manage our water pollution than we used to too. And here we are, you know, we have a new challenge before us here. How do we manage our groundwater resources here? And we don't have a real good track record yet of how we manage groundwater pumping, or for that matter, how we manage the pollution that comes from the bottom of farm fields and enters well. We just haven't sorted that out entirely yet. And you know, this is an active area in the courts and an active area in the legislature. But you know, these are cases, and I'll show more of them later, where you know, too much pumping has resulted in dry lakes and streams. And so, you know, I would hope, regardless of what the environmental impact statement says about the town of Rome, that, you know, that being good citizens, and you are if you're coming out on a cold day like this to hear some talks, you know, you think about what this means beyond your town, to your county, to the central stands, and your state as a whole. So, here we are right now, Adams County, 14 Mile Creek, and there's Saratoga's up here. And this is what we call the central sands. So this is kind of like your larger water neighborhood right here. And if we see it by air, we're right here right now. Here's 14 Mile Creek, and 10 mile, and these would be the headwaters of the Rocha Creek. So we're in a water-rich area that we value for many reasons. And here you see that we've got some ditching and those kind of things going on in the headwater, and there's hydrologic alterations always change our watersheds and the quality of our waters. Let's talk about groundwater now, because groundwater is the thing that fuels all of this stuff, the underground water. So again, groundwater is this underground stuff here. So we know if we go through the soil, we can feel when it's moist, but that's not groundwater yet. And we get below a certain zone, and all the pore spaces, between sand grains and cracks in the rock are saturated with water, and that's where we enter the zone of where the groundwater is. The top of the groundwater is called the water table here. And groundwater comes from local precipitation. So on average here, we get about 32 inches of rain or so. The last couple of years have been pretty wet. People remember 2012, dry summer, a little bit dry then. But these things bounce up and down. About 32 inches of rain a year. Only about an inch of water runs off directly off the land surface into lakes and streams. The remainder of it soaks into the soil. And now if you've been doing the math here, we got 31 inches. What happens to that water? Well, mostly plants use that water. Suck it up through the roots, bring it into the plant leaves, and it evaporates out of plant leaves and goes back up into the atmosphere. So about 20 inches, 22 inches, somewhere in that of our precipitation ends up leaving through plants. If you've been doing the math here, that leaves us with about 10 inches. And that's the 10 inches that percolates through the soils and becomes our groundwater. Okay? Now the groundwater doesn't just sit still up there, right? Because pretty soon, we'd be up to our eyeballs in it, and we'd have some other problems, but it flows. It flows from places higher on the landscape to places lower on the landscape, and it's just gravity that's doing this job here. So in this cartoon here, we see we have a groundwater flow system where there's something hard beneath here that doesn't let any water through, and there's water going to this east stream and water going to this west stream. For some reason, I think this is compelling, but now I'm not so sure. But kind of, sort of, the shape of this thing is like a rising loaf of bread. That we're higher in the middle, we're lower where that water is discharging to streams, and we have a higher spot here. One other thing here that gets kind of tricky to explain, we have a tough time drawing this to scale. The reason is, the distance between here and here is very large. So this might be like the headwaters of 10 Mile Creek, and this is the headwaters of some stream way the heck on the other side of Plainfield. So it's many miles, where the aquifer here is only, maybe a couple hundred feet thick. So we're drawing this kind of stuff out of scale here a little bit. Come on. Oh, okay. So everybody, if we dug a hole about 40 acres, or if there's a naturally occurring hole on the landscape that went below the water table, what would we call that hole? A lake. Oh, thank you. That's exactly right. And so the point of that is to show that surface waters like lakes and like streams are intimately connected with the groundwater. We have to look at these things as a single resource. Okay. So anytime when we see a lake, or we're wading in some cold stream, by golly, you got to think that this is groundwater. Okay. This is groundwater that's been recently discharged out of the earth into the stream or into the lake. Okay. Let's look at your water neighborhood a little more here. So this is where we are. If we put this on a groundwater map, this is the topography. Most of you know what a topographic map is. This is the topography of the height of the water table above sea level. Just like we have USGS topographic maps that we use for similar purposes here. And I know you guys in the back can't see this, but it kind of describes the shape of that risen loaf of bread. And in this case here, it's highest in the middle, and then it falls off both sides here. And from these, we can kind of talk about what direction groundwater flows and that sort of thing. And so if we zoomed in some more on the town of Rome here, the general direction of groundwater flow is east to west, but you see that there's some curves and this and that to it, but generally east to west. It means that groundwater is originating as precipitation all along the surface here, and then when it soaks in, it starts moving along the direction of where these lines go. And this is something that we can figure out, and it's not particular rocket science, actually. Okay, let's talk about the potential water concerns from agricultural development. And these concerns I've talked, because there's of course all kinds of different agriculture here, but I'm kind of talking about kind of what we typically see around here in the great expansion of agriculture that's going on. That we're seeing corn, potatoes, processing vegetables, that sort of thing, with or without a animal and manure component. So that's what I'm talking about here. And we can talk about these concerns as being concerns about the quantity or the concerns about the quality of the groundwater here. So the quantity here, and I'm going to get kind of repetitious about this a little bit, but I want to be careful about what I'm saying here so I stay objective. But the quantity, when we pump groundwater, pumping lowers water levels. Okay, there was mention of this cone and depression concept before, and the other thing is that pumping reduces stream flows. This is just the way it works. So this is the cartoon that we saw before, and we can add in a pumping well here. And the first thing that I noticed when I saw this thing is this pumping well right here is intercepting water that was on its way to the east stream here, and it's taking it out and putting it someplace else. Okay, so that's automatically